The hunter turned his head toward the shadow monarch standing beside him. He couldn't figure out how, but he could tell what the knight was feeling. Just like Jin-Woo could sense the emotions of his shadow soldiers, he could also pick up on what the shadow monarch was going through. And right now he could tell the shadow monarch was super angry, like boiling mad inside. No. It was way beyond just anger. This was intense fury. Shadow soldiers kept dying, and coming back to life over and over. To anyone else, it might have seemed like their ability to regenerate was endless. But Jin-Woo knew the truth. He understood all too well how this power worked. Because he had it too. It only works as long as you have enough mana. Once your mana runs out, the shadow soldiers stay down for good. And the shadow monarch is left without an army to command. Jin-Woo felt his magic fading away bit by bit. The king quickly turned his horse around and charged at the newcomers. The fight that followed was wild, leaving bodies scattered everywhere and blood covering the ground. The war's fire, started by many soldiers, was spreading fast, destroying everything in its path. But it seemed like the battle was almost over. The battlefield was quiet now, with only a few creatures left. The monarch had lost his horse in the fight, but he kept going, slicing through two demon knights who got in his way. Now he stood face to face with another demon, which was leaning against a strange jagged rock to catch its breath. The demon's face was hidden behind its helmet, but the shadow monarch knew exactly who it was. We could have ended the war today, he thought. The demon looked up weakly. Why did you betray me? The shadow monarch was badly hurt, and didn't seem like it would survive. The voice from behind its helmet sounded weak, but still as cold as ice. What could have it been? It muttered. We could have wiped you all out. But, Jin-Woo stepped forward, his anger clear in his voice. Why did you betray me? The demon burst into a loud, thunderous laugh. He'll never understand. It taunted back. Jin-Woo couldn't make sense of what the shadow monarch said next. It was all just nonsense to him. Had he misheard? No. At $7 shop. Though Jin-Woo couldn't understand, the monarch apparently did. He reached out and grabbed the demon by its neck to pull it closer. The demon gurgled in pain. Crunk. The part of its armor that protected its neck was bent out of shape by Shadow Monarch's grip. Yet, the demon made sure to relay everything it intended. Persinnen and entas at $. Schlick. The monarch's thumb plunged into the demon's neck. Calf. The demon coughed blood. At that moment, Jin-Woo made eye contact with the demon from under its helmet. The hunter let go, shocked. The demon hit the ground, lifeless. Jin-Woo's eyes widened in disbelief. Those eyes, he could swear he'd seen them before. But that didn't make sense. Grump. His heart raced as he shook his head, trying to process what was happening. Slowly, he reached out and pulled off the demon's helmet. Thump. The helmet dropped from his hand. There, staring back at him, were those same eyes filled with fiery hatred, even in death. Jin-Woo couldn't believe it. How could this be? He knew those eyes better than anyone. They belonged to someone he would never forget. Jin-Woo stared into eyes he had seen before, eyes that belonged to someone on the top floor of the demon's castle. Nalan. The demon monarch. He muttered in shock. As the truth hit him, another realization struck hard. His hands were covered in black armor, as were his feet, legs, and chest. Without even realizing it, Jin-Woo had taken control of the shadow monarch's body. His heart thudded loudly in his ears. Boom! 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 He placed his hand on his chest. Thump, 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 thump. His eyes widened in surprise. How was this possible? Why hadn't he noticed this before? After going through the double dungeon, Jin-Woo had become more aware of his heartbeat, but somehow he missed this until now. His trembling hand moved to the right side of his chest. He could feel two heartbeats, one from the left and one from the right. Thump! As he stared at the ground in shock, 4 dark shapes loomed overhead, growing bigger and closer with every second. He glanced up at the sky. 4 angels with 6 wings each floated down toward him. Then, just as quickly, the memory vanished. Pabithing. The sound echoed in his ears, and darkness closed in around him once again. As he slipped away, a clear robotic voice spoke to him. Data retrieval is complete. 7 uninvited guests. Alpio John Chontroi, the leader of Korea's top guild, wasn't thrilled when Jinshul asked him to check out a C-rank gate. At first he thought about sending an elite team of hunters in his place, but then he heard more about what was happening, and he just couldn't pass it up. Wait, Hunter Sung had gone into a double dungeon. That was already super cool, but Hunter Sung being there made it even better. How many hunters or even guild leaders wouldn't jump at the chance to get involved in something like this? Jongin instantly cancelled the raid he'd been planning, and called together his top team of hunters. Jinchul had stressed that this was a major emergency, so Jongin knew he needed to act fast. The Hunter Association has reached out for our help, he told them. The hunters exchanged worried glances and whispered among themselves. They had been called away just as they were about to start a super tough A-rank raid, so everyone knew this was serious business. Plus they just heard some really bad news from Japan, which only made them more anxious. What's going on? One of the top leaders in the guild asked urgently. Jongin nodded and turned toward the vice guild master, ready to get some answers. Word spread quickly a second secret dungeon had been found inside a C-rank gate. Ayin's eyes widened in confusion.
A dungeon within a dungeon?
She muttered. That sounded super rare. But why would the association bother the Hunters Guild over something as small as a C-rank gate? Jongin noticed her puzzled expression and stepped in to explain. From what I gather, Hunter Jin-Woo Sung is inside, battling something all by himself. Manager Wu didn't seem himself, so when he called on us it caught everyone off guard. What's going on, Hunter Chan? Her expression had completely changed. Nothing, she replied flatly. All right then, Hunter Sung can handle things on his own, but let's head out just in case. Hans nodded, and the others quickly packed their bags. All they had were their weapons, but even those needed to be stored with extra care. Wait, something's missing, one of them said. Another hunter tapped their colleague on the shoulder, and pointed to a corner of the room. There, sitting alone on the ground, was Suzuki, looking really upset. Should we get him? Someone asked. No, leave him be. The others understood without needing an explanation. Suzuki was a hunter from Japan, who had joined their team not long ago. His eyes locked on the news playing on his phone. Time to step up, he said. Got it. The two hunters jumped into one of the guild vans, leaving Suzuki behind at the office. One after another, the vehicles carrying the top strike team zoomed off toward their mission. Whoa, hot, hot, Kim yelped as his cigarette slipped from his fingers in surprise. It landed on the sand, so there was no need to put it out. But the way Kim slammed his foot down on the cigarette, but showed how upset he was. This wasn't the time or place to take out frustrations on a harmless cigarette. Kim turned his attention back to the parked vans. He had been so focused on noticing that everyone getting out of the vehicles was part of the elite hunters guild group that he hadn't even felt the cigarette ashes fall onto his fingers. Zhang and Choi Hei Cha and Cha, and Cha and Jean Yun were all there. Who would have thought Ki-hoon, son of all people, would show up? The big shots from the Hunters Guild were all gathered here. Kim had ended up in this room full of superstars just because he'd followed Jinchul on a hunch. What was even weirder was that the gate they were talking about wasn't even an A rank. It was only a C rank. Kim's mouth felt like sandpaper. He couldn't wrap his head around what could be happening inside. Manager Wu usually spilled the beans when it came to stuff like this, but even he was being super secretive. All Kim could do was pace back and forth, trying to calm his nerves. The discarded butts had piled up into a small heap at his feet. Jinchul ignored the reporters staring at him with pleading eyes and rushed over to Jongin. Like Jinchul before, Jongin couldn't stop staring at the gate. Whoa, what in the world? What is that thing? Jongin's words tumbled out in shock, his voice filled with disbelief. Jinchul had razor-sharp reflexes for a fighter, but Jongin was no ordinary guy. He was Korea's strongest mage. When it came to tracking magic energy, Jongin was only beaten by Yoon-ho Baek's super-sharp perceivers of a beast and Jin-Woo Sung's crazy good instincts. Jinchul asked, "Can you handle it?" But what he really meant was, "I can't." Jongin's voice was serious as he replied. "You said Hunter Sung was inside." "Yes," Jinchul answered, his tone firm. Jongin nodded slowly, thinking hard about what lay ahead. Who else could handle something like that? Is he trying to save the planet by himself or something? Jongin burst out. Jinchul just nodded wearily. It actually made sense to him. "We gotta go in, no matter what," Jinchul said, sounding as tired as Jongin felt. If Jin-Woo Sung and the Hunters Guild couldn't handle this, then nobody else in Korea could. Basically, if they failed here, the whole country was totally doomed. Wait a second, did they say Hunter Sung? Kim, who was trying to listen in without being noticed, caught Jin-Woo's name and nearly lost it. His eyes went wide like a startled rabbit's. Hunter Sung is actually here. Kim's eyes locked onto the entrance as he glanced around quickly. There were 2 S-rank hunters, and a bunch of A-ranks too. And Hunter Sung was already inside. He frantically patted his pockets.
Oh no, where did I put my notebook?
His reporter senses tingled with the scent of a massive story. He dashed off to find it, not wanting to miss a single word or detail. Everyone was focused on what was happening in Japan. We landed an incredible opportunity that felt like a magical gift. One that comes once in a lifetime. I wondered why Manager Wu wouldn't say anything earlier. But now it made sense. He must have known something big was coming. Hunter Sung turned out to be a VIP with classified information, and the association kept a close watch on him for his safety. Manager Wu kept quiet, and no one really wondered why. The elite strike squad sprang into action as Jinshul and Jongin wrapped up their chat. The tanks grabbed their defensive gear, the damage dealers picked up their weapons, and the healers equipped themselves with magic tools charged with mana. They were ready in no time. It's what you'd expect from the top guild in the country. Jongin exchanged a quick look with Heijin and nodded. Hein gave a quick nod, signaling that she had finished checking the squad. Everything was set. The top members of the surveillance team were already ready. Jinshul scanned some info from one of his team members, then turned to face everyone with a serious look on his face. All right. Let's roll, he said. They still had a long journey ahead. The hunters hurried through the dark passageway, their footsteps echoing off the cold walls. Even though they were all high-ranking, not everyone could move at the same pace. Hyen was the fastest. But when she tried to dart ahead, Jongin caught her by the wrist. What do you think you're doing, Hunter Chen? He asked sharply. Hyen didn't answer, but Jongin knew what she was thinking. She wanted to rush in and save Jin-Woo as fast as possible. But Jongin also knew that moving too quickly could put everyone in danger. Some of us can't keep up with you, he said firmly. If we try to push ourselves too hard, we'll be at a disadvantage. Hyen frowned, but reluctantly fell back. Joining the others at the rear of the group, Jinshul, walking nearby, overheard the exchange and muttered under his breath. So the rumors are true. Then, Jongin shot him a questioning look, but Jinshul just shook his head and stayed quiet. Jongin looked at him suspiciously before turning back around. There was definitely something fishy going on ahead, and they needed to be super careful. He couldn't stop thinking about Hunter Sung being in the same spot. I hope we make it in time, Jongin thought nervously. All they could do now was move fast, stay sharp and keep their fingers crossed that Hunter was okay. They couldn't let stress mess with their heads. Jongin started talking to Jinshul to lighten the mood. How did Hunter Sung even get inside? He asked. I'm not totally sure, Jinshul replied. But people who saw it said Hunter Sung acted like he already knew. This gate had a double dungeon. Jongin furrowed his brow. Any guesses what's going on? Jinshul shook his head. Not really, but something feels off. Really? Jongin leaned in. Curious. He knew a thing or two about Hunter. He was a guild master after all, and part of his job was tracking down top-tier talent. For obvious reasons he had shown a great deal of interest in Jin-Woo. There was a similar incident near here, Jongin said, and Jinshul knew exactly what he was talking about. After all, Jinshul himself had led the investigation when Jin-Woo entered a double dungeon 6 months ago, and now, here Jin-Woo was, diving into another one after all that time. It was pretty interesting, and a bit curious how history seemed to be repeating itself. Anyone who knew about both events couldn't just write it off as a random fluke. Jinshul had predicted this moment, and sure enough, Jongin brought it up. Double dungeons are super rare, Jongin said, shaking his head in disbelief. They're so rare that most people might only see one in their entire lives. But Hunter Sung hasn't just found one. He's actually stumbled upon 2. And here's the kicker. He didn't just find the second one by accident. He went out searching for it. No way, right? Isn't that odd? Jinshul stayed quiet, but Jongin had brought up some really good points. There were so many unanswered questions about Jin-Woo, like that double dungeon thing, how he came back to life, and those crazy abilities of his. But one thing was super clear. The Hunters Association, and basically all of Korea, needed Jin-Woo Sung big time. That's why Jinshul jumped in and asked the Hunters Guild for help right away, without even waiting for the okay from his bosses. Keeping Hunter Sung safe was top priority, no matter what it took. There would be time to ask questions later. Jinshul snapped out of his thoughts and lifted his head. We're here, he said quietly. Normally it would take about an hour for most hunters to cover this distance. But the elite strike squad and surveillance team moved like pros, reaching the end of the tunnel in just 10 minutes. The exit was now in sight. I think that's it, someone said. Yes. I sense something. Jongin agreed, his voice low and serious. Suddenly he froze. A menacing presence filled the air, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. But then he relaxed a little. Jin-Woo was still nearby. And he could sense his strong presence. Everything's fine as long as Hunter Sung is okay, Jongin told himself. Jin-Woo's powers, combined with the elite hunters by their side, should be more than enough to handle whatever magical creature waited ahead. Reassured, Jongin shouted to the group, "Let's move. Everyone." The elite squad from the Hunters Guild and the association charged forward together, bursting through a massive doorway that looked like the entrance to an ancient castle. What they saw was nothing they'd ever seen before. "Wait, what the?" one of them stammered. "This place is seriously creepy," another hunter muttered. The room was filled with tons of shattered stone statues scattered across the floor. Chunks of debris were piled up everywhere. Suddenly someone shouted, "Hey, look at that." A massive stone figure towered above them. Its hands were frozen mid-air like it had been about to slam the ground, but got stuck in time. As they approached, a head with part of its face blown off grabbed their attention. Jinchul's heart pounded as memories of the survivors' stories from the last double dungeon incident flooded his mind. They had all described this place in detail. The god statue, the stone guardians, everything. Each survivor had warned about a monstrous statue that could obliterate even a strong hunter in an instant, and countless stone statues whose movements were too fast to see. The area showed signs of a massive battle that had happened recently. Now, with the dangers handled, their main focus was to find out what had happened to Hunter Sung. Jongin finally spotted him deeper in the room. "He's over there," Jongin said. Jin-Woo was lying quietly on his back, as if he were asleep, right beneath the giant fists of the Colossus. "Hunter Sung," Han shouted, holding up both hands to stop the other hunters who were about to rush to his side. Jinchul turned to her impatiently, and noticed how sweaty her face was. "Hunter Chas," she muttered, biting her lower lip nervously. "Look, there's something over there." Then, a stone statue kneeling next to Jin-Woo suddenly stood up. Its wings were torn and one arm was missing. "I don't remember inviting humans here," the statue said with a smirk after scanning the intruders. The hunters froze in shock, unable to speak. Jongin had no idea what to say, but he knew one thing for sure: this living statue was the source of the creepy energy he'd been feeling all along. The power coming from it was so intense that the air around it seemed to ripple and distort. Jongin's whole body got goosebumps as he stared at the statue from far away. He snuck a glance at Jin-Woo. Facing someone this powerful explained why Jin-Woo was lying unconscious on the ground. Only Jin-Woo could have destroyed all the other statues while fighting the angel. Jongin was completely amazed. "Now it's up to us." A big drop of sweat rolled down his face as he wondered if this enemy was a magic beast. It was definitely stronger than that giant ant from Jeju Island. Jongin swallowed hard. His friends Hain and Jinchul looked pale with fear. They could also feel the huge power of the being in front of them, and they were super upset about it. Meanwhile, the other hunters behind the trio were shocked for a different reason. "Wait, did that thing just talk?" one of them whispered. "I'm not going crazy, right?" another hunter asked. "A magic beast that can speak our language. That's impossible," someone else exclaimed. The hunters all stared at each other in shock. What they were seeing couldn't be real. Everyone knew that smart magic beasts had their own languages. This was something that just didn't happen. When gates first started showing up, people tried to learn the language of the strange creatures that came through them. But these weren't ordinary animals. These were wild, magical beasts with fierce instincts. Even when people managed to catch one, which wasn't easy, things didn't go well. The creatures would act strangely around humans, and eventually lose their minds. Even when tied up, they'd go totally wild, trying to attack anyone near them. They didn't care if they hurt themselves in the process, tearing their own flesh or breaking their bones. All they wanted was to escape. In the end, they either broke down or were saved from their suffering. Scientists had agreed that humans and magical creatures couldn't live together, and talking to them was impossible. Yet here one stood, chatting in Korean, as naturally as if it were the easiest thing in the world. This magical creature might just be the most amazing discovery ever. But it sent a weird, spooky feeling through their veins. Something deep inside them screamed, "Danger!" As the statue took a step forward, the hunters stumbled backward, their knees shaking. The angel slowly looked around the room with an eerie grin, like it was enjoying the fear on their faces. Its glowing eyes locked onto each hunter one by one, sharp and hungry, like a hawk staring down its next meal. "That's a good enough offering for His Highness." The creature hissed with a creepy smile that made everyone's skin crawl. Wouldn't a smiling snake look creepy? But this was even worse. The hunters' eyes were glued to the sight, their bodies frozen in shock. "His Highness." Jonghyun's mind raced. What did the creature mean by that? Was there another magic beast lurking somewhere? Before Jonghyun could figure it out, the angel statue suddenly sprang to life. With a snap, Ashta ripped off the arm of one of the other statues lying on the ground. The hunters watched in disbelief as the angel placed the severed arm on its right shoulder. In an instant, the two pieces melded together like magic. "What the?" someone muttered, stunned. The angel stretched its newly attached arm casually like it was yawning. Then in a flash it appeared right in front of them, making everyone jump back in fright. Bam! Before anyone could even react, it swung its new fist with superhuman strength and smashed a hunter right in the face. The hunter's face twisted gruesomely as he flew backward, slamming hard into a wall. By the time the other hunters nearby tried to fight back, the angel had vanished into thin air. "Where? When?" someone shouted, confused. "Over there," another yelled, pointing. But when they turned to look, the angel was already back where it started, like it never moved at all. The figure wiggled its fingers, testing out its shiny new hand. The test had worked perfectly. Then came the cries, "Myung-shul," and "Nu." The hunters realized one of their own was down. Myung-shul dropped like a stone, killed in an instant by whatever this thing was. Jonghyun's eyes darted around frantically. This monster had just taken out Myung-shul, an A-rank tank from Korea's best guild, with one hit. And now Hunter Sung was trying to fight it all by himself. Jonghyun wasn't even thinking about the pain of losing his teammate. He just wanted to find a way out of this nightmare alive. However, not everyone stayed calm. "You jerk," one of the female hunters shouted. She had been in love with the dead hunter, and now she was furious. She ran toward the statue, fire blazing in both hands. Before she could throw the flames, someone grabbed her wrist. She turned her head and saw Hyun standing there. She yanked her arm free and glared at the S-rank hunter. "Let go," she shouted. The woman held tight, her voice calm but firm. "You need to calm down," she said. Hyun's face twisted in anger. "I told you to let me go." The woman studied Hyun's expression. It was a mix of pain and determination. Hyun bit her lip hard, trying not to lose control. Finally the woman hesitated, noticing how serious Hyun looked. She realized that even though the magic creature had stopped attacking after its first strike, it was smarter not to push it. But she couldn't just stand there doing nothing when it had taken her loved one in such a terrible way. She fought back tears. Once she was sure her friend wouldn't do anything reckless, Hyun turned her gaze toward Jin-Woo.